deck profile for the deck that I went 5-0 today, undefeated in GFG. As usual, it's purple. We're playing Belfemon today. This is the list. You probably, if you watch Huang's, you probably seen his video where I got to comment on the list shown there. That was actually not my list. That was Rusty's list. But you know, I knew enough. But being friends with Huang meant I got to be more or less the commentator on that. But this is what I ran today and what we're on, and we'll go over it real quick. We're on 5 eggs. I go back and forth between whether or not I'm on 5 eggs or 4. Generally, I like to be on 4 eggs, but because proto gizzes make you run out of eggs a little bit faster than typical, we were on 5. So as like a just in case measure, generally speaking, Belphemon can win the game fast enough that you might not need the 5th, but Kapurimon occasionally comes up actually as like the extra one of, both as a way to like help you minus in your hand if you're just overdrawing cards, or as a way to like out rookies that might be like standing in your way, especially like floodgate rookies like the Pomomon that stops you from playing by effects. But other than that, you want to be on Demimera. Draw one, trash one is exactly what the deck is all about. This is a draw one, trash one deck. Can't beat Demimeramon there. Definitely better than the other Demimeras or Tsunamon, because you don't want to be overdrawing. That could end up overdrawing is like a big issue you can run into that stops you from winning games, because you really want to get the rage mode effect off a lot of the times. Discard aggro next, yeah, for sure. Do you think Pinamon is okay 5th egg instead of Kapuri? Yes. It's up to you if you want to play Pinamon or Kapurimon. I think Kapurimon has a bit more of a niche, because deleting level 3s can actually come up in quite a few instances. But if you want to run Kapuri or Pinamon instead, that's more than valid actually. The thing about Kapuri is that even if you aren't deleting a level 3, you still are allowed to just trash a card from your hand, which is good for, knocking you down below the threshold for rage mode. Um, Moving on to the rookies, we're on 3 Fasco, 1 Fasco, 3 Psych, 1 Gazi, and then 3 Proto Gizmons. I guess we could talk about the Gizmons later, but other than the Gizmons, we are on 8. That gives us like a 12 total of level 3s, which is like pretty fine. We have mulligans, so we're generally fine playing this few, and we also have ways to dig for them in terms of like your other Gizmons, your purple boosts, etc., and scatter mode. So as for the actual choices here, Fasco is really nice because Von Deletion, draw one, trash one. You can think of it as like Tapermon, but Tapermon, is a pure plus, which is an L if you're trying to turn on rage mode. So having to draw one, trash one is really nice, and plus you want to get specific cards in your trash. So the trash one here is super valuable. You can pop it off of Astamon or off of Gizmon AT for that effect. And the inherit is also really nice if you actually, once in a while, you will make a stack off a level 3 all the way up into a sleep mode, and is a good way to trigger Astamon effect if you didn't have a Karata. And sometimes you don't want to play Karata if you're like up against, say, for instance, Hunters. So that's really nice for that purpose. Other than that, you run the cost blocker Psychmon, the play cost reducing blocker. And the reason is for like specific matchups. It's mostly Royal Knights. You can honestly drop this and play something else that's not a Floodgate, but Floodgates, the fact that you can like run Floodgates is like one of the strengths of this deck. You can run Gazimon instead, and I do have that as a one of, but I think there's more matchups where a Psychmon comes up. If say in your meta, like in your local meta, there's more like blooms running around, then Gazimon is a lot more valuable. Gazimon, especially for me today, the Gazimon like cinched a couple of bloom matchups today. I've like fought 2 blooms, and there's a couple of times where Gazimon just cinches it for me. And the Psychmon is more for like either the Mirror or Royal Knights. Royal Knights is the big one. It's not really popular right now. At least I haven't run into it much yet. But like the fact that you have Psychmon makes Royal Knights like significantly easier as a matchup, to be honest. And then we have the one of the blocker Fascomon. It's because I only have one blocker level 4, so I wanted to have the second blocker to increase the odds, because there will be moments where you use Astamon effect to save yourself from like lethal by discarding cards for Belphemon effect and using Asta to get another blocker out. And you also want blockers for the Raid Wargrave matchup, because Raid Wargrave Raid gets around Sleep Mode's protection. So they're allowed to raid to it, and then because they unsuspend, they get to raid into it twice. So you will need a blocker off the Asta effect to save your Sleep Mode in that instance. And keeping Sleep Mode alive is imperative to your entire strategy. So that's why I'm on 2 blockers, and I went for. I mean, I felt like I could cut one of the Fascos for the blocker Fasco and still be fine. The level 3s are pretty flexible, right? Besides like Fasco or Psychmon, there's like a bunch of others that you can consider. I've seen a couple people run the BT2 Gabumon, which combines with Eismon Scatter Mode. I think that's fine, but I don't like how he doesn't have his own effect like on deletion for like to use with AT for instance or for Astamon. And I don't like that if you use them with the scatter mode, you'll draw probably way too many cards and you'll have a much harder time getting yourself below 6 for the rage mode trigger. So that's why personally I'm not going to be on Gabumon. Tapermon is also an option, and I think I already mentioned before. It's the same issue with Gabumon and all the other ones that don't discard. You're gonna end up overdrawing at some point, and it's gonna screw you over. There have been times where because I could not get myself under 7 cards that I was screwed. Especially like in the Examon matchup, I lost Examon because I couldn't get that DP boost to be bigger, or at least match the DP of Exa. As for the level 4s, Scatter Mode, it draws 3s and trashes 2, which is a +1 in your hand size, which I mentioned before could be bad, but at the same time, not only is it really good at setting up your trash, it's really good to combo with XT, but sometimes if you discard too hard, you will just have no cards left in hand. So it's actually fine to plus occasionally, just occasionally though. Plus the Eismon combo is just super strong for this deck in particular, so it's hard to give up. The one of Eismon is really powerful because you always want something to use with Astamon, for example. Or just as like an extra like aggressive thing. If you say end of turn Karata effect, draw 1, discard 1, and discard the Eismon, you get to play the Eismon and you get to play body of Astamon, which can help you get lethal. Right? Yeah. Examon can be hard for this deck because of the evade as well. I played into it once last Friday and it got screwed over because I keep forgetting, because it's been so long since I fought Examon and I forgot about all of his effects. And I think the big thing was that I got stuck with too many cards in hand and I couldn't get to 17k. But you can beat it. If you just need to play really, really smart. The other level 4s I got here, we got the one of Eismon, which is self-explanatory. The Devimon, which is a blocker, which is also self-explanatory because I already talked about how good blockers are. Devimon in particular has a 1 evo cost, so you can use it to turbo into Astamon occasionally. So say if you have some sort of Gizmon on board, like a Proto Giz and a level 3, you can evolve that level 3 into Devimon for 1 and Astamon for 3, which is a really, really cheap way to go into Belphemon from just those 2 bodies, which is really nice. Another thing I've done before with the Eismon, right, is you can play Proto Giz from your hand and discard the Eismon and then evolve the Eismon you played into Astamon, which is also an extremely cheap and easy way to go into sleep mode from an empty board even. Empty board and a hatch. Alright. Then talking about Ogremon. Ogremon I wasn't on initially, but I put myself back onto it because this is one of the few level 4s I have an on play that lets you just discard a card for free. And I felt like I needed it because I ran into too many moments where I was at like exactly 6 in hand, so drawing for a turn would put me to 7, and then I would be screwed over by not having the DP boost and Sec Plus for Rage mode. So this was just another way, or just like one primary way, I guess. Like probably one of the more convenient ways that you can play a card off of Astamon and get yourself into minusing in hand size. And there also will be occasional moments where you can save your ass with the Ogremon on play during your opponent's turn, right? So like I mentioned before with the Devimon, sometimes with blockers in general, sometimes you just need that one extra blocker to save your ass. Another way to go about it is to play Ogremon and pop their guy. Ogremon can also just pop Floodgates or any other problematic cards in general. So yeah, he's nice for that. Next is Dobermon. Dobermon is almost like another copy of Scatter Mode. He's a way to get you more resources if you've gotten so minus that you have like nothing in your hand. But his on deletion to mill 3, then take back any purple Digimon from your trash to your hand is super nice because sleep mode discards itself from the top of your stack at the end of the turn. This is one way to get it back if you aren't finding any additional ones off your draws. So that's really nice. And you can also get back basically anything else you want. He's a level 4, so you can play him off Astamon, which is also really convenient for this purpose. But yeah, you can also get back anything you want. If you need another Astamon to go into another Belfie with, that you can get that. If you need a level 3 to evolve in your raising area for the following turn, you can get that. If you need Proto Gizmon to play for 1 as like a deletion target, you can get that. You know, there's like all sort of things you can grab with Dobermon. So he's pretty nice for that as well. Um, Moving on to the Gizmons. Some people are back and forth. EX, oh, right, let me read the chat real quick. Someone mentioned EX1 Ogremon. The thing is that this Ogremon is better for is because this Ogremon is on play and you get to play it off of Astamon because the specific moment you want that discard is oftentimes when you're exactly like 1 off from getting Rage Mode at the end of opponent's turn, right? So that's what that is for. So it just Ogremon being an on play just meshes more with Astamon. So the Sec Plus on the 5k body on EX Ogremon is probably not going to be good this meta. I think there's too many things you can crash into, and I think you're just losing. If you do that and then just lose the body, I think you're going to be falling behind because you need bodies to evolve in Astamon off of it, or to pop with Astamon, right? Or just to pop with any of your Gizmons to climb up into sleep mode. So EX1 Ogremon works better in a deck like Bielstar, where you're discarding a card, you're getting those 2 checks, and then you're probably discarding something that reduces the play cost of Bielstar, right? So like something like that where you aren't trying to evolve up into a level 6, where the Sec plus Ogremon is much more ideal than this one. So this is why we're playing Ogremon, is that you get to play him off of Astamon and discard a card. Even if you aren't popping anything, you just get to discard a card. That's much more important than the pop, which is why we're not considering Lucemon. I don't think you can fill it because things like the Proto Gizmons bottom deck the cards in your trash. You generally don't fill the trash fast enough to justify anything that requires a high trash count. Things like Belphemon Blast Mode and Lucemons particularly as well. Yeah, you're not getting Chaosmon cheap enough. Like I said before, you're not filling the trash that fast in this deck. This isn't BLs, and this isn't really Lilith Loop or anything like that. You're not gonna get there, especially because one of the strengths of the Gizmons is that they float, and they float by bottom decking 2 of them, which means you're lowering your trash count generally. This is also why I generally don't recommend BLs1 Blast Mode. You can run it if you want. It's viable. It will win you games every once in a while, but you're not going to get to 20 in trash that often, generally. Especially with how fast this meta is, you really, really want to be, if you can, winning with like the first Rage Mode stack, like before you even have more than 10 cards in your trash, right? Which is possible with this deck, right? And if you can do that, you can pull it. You'd go for that. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on those. Moving back to talking about the Gizmons, this is probably your primary way of getting cards out of your hand and going down in hand size to make Rage Mode work. But beyond that, they also are good trash setup, right? Because they draw and discard, so they get you your Rage Modes in the trash, they get you Karata in the trash, they get you whatever else you need in the trash, including more copies of themselves, so that when they on delete, they play the higher level, which is really, really strong in this deck. Because of all the other effects that you have that delete things, like Astamon in particular, or the fact that Karata deletes one of them to play a new one. Because they float, you don't go down in how many bodies you have on board, and are more likely to be able to push for lethal. Not to mention, you can make plays where you can, say, drop an Asta, pop an AT, go into a sleep mode, and then AT floats into XD, and now you also have a blocker on top of your sleep mode, which is going to be really important in a lot of matchups to make absolute sure that you have enough ways to stop your opponent from winning the game, right? Like I've seen people try to like just play the XT to pop the scatters and their scatters and dobers and other level 4s and just play XT, but like the ability to pop AT and play XT for free, it comes up so much. And then XT being able to like being not just a blocker, but a blocker that for free floats into Proto Giz from trash is also super valuable because then you're allowed to block with it and not worry about going down and how many bodies you have on board. He'll die, you play a Proto Giz, and you still have Belphi plus Proto Giz, right? You still have two bodies to swing with. And another thing that's nice about that is that because these things float, you can swing on your turn with Rage Mode, you can swing with them, and even if they die, if you just float them into the next one, you still have a body to pop with the Rage Mode for the Rage Mode unsuspend. So yeah, there's so much reason to love the Gizmons. The Gizmon float also is one of the reasons why your matchups into anything that like tries to delete your bodies is also super nice. Like Shine is like really strong in this right now, and you're not super afraid of like shine removal because if they remove your Gizmons, as long as you set up your trash, they just all that means is that you get to play the next one, right? Which is super nice. Being able to play around removal like that. Counterpoint to that, if your opponent plays like non-deletion based removal, like say Mirage, then these things just get bounced, and that feels really bad. Mirage is a pain in the ass because not only because they add cards to your hand and make it impossible for you to trigger Rage Mode effect, but also because they're bouncing your Gizmons and stopping you from triggering their on deletions. Yeah, yeah. But that's the Gizmons out of the way. Also, Karata effect, right? Karata is necessary as like an alternate way of evolving into sleep mode besides using Balthamon. And Karata effect, you can delete any Gizmon, including Proto, Gizmon, AT, or XT. You can delete them to play the sleep mode from your hand with a reduced by however much the play cost of what you deleted. So, like playing sleep mode for what 8 by popping Proto Giz is like meh. It's good enough generally, at least. But you can do better. If you can pop AT, popping AT at the very least is really good. 5 play cost is already pretty low to pop this to play sleep mode. And doing that also can get you XD from your trash for free, which is also super, super strong. But if you can go into Astamon instead, even if it costs you more, it's usually worth it because the Astamon inheritable is so, so strong and helps you set up for lethal so many times. So yeah. Karata is also super important because his ability deletes level 6s specifically, and since Rage Mode only deletes 5s and lower, it's really important for that. The fact that you can also just play multiple Karatas and like push past something like Wargrave Protection is also super strong. But Wargrave is still kind of an awkward matchup because they can use Black Warg to just destroy your Karatas before that happens, which is awkward. So that matchup's it's a bit of a back and forth. It just kind of comes down to whether or not they see the Black Warg to pop your Karatas and whether or not you can get your Karatas out to pop the Black Warg, or Hades Force. Hades Force fucks you too. But I'm digressing. Moving on. Sleep mode and Rage mode. Um, the win con of the deck. Sleep mode stops your opponent from attacking once per turn. Then you can trigger your Astamon, or you can wait until end of turn to trigger Astamon off of end of opponent's turn. Draw discard effects like Karata or Fastcomon. And then Rage mode is the real win con because he has Security Attack Plus. He can unsuspend, so 17k 4 checks generally wins you the game a lot of the time, especially if you have one or two more extra bodies, right? If they're at 4 security and you have him and one other body that can swing, if you can just, I don't know, pop the egg for Proto Giz, then that's still lethal right there. Just make sure, you pay attention to your opponent's security count and just figure out what's the most optimal amount of attacks gets you there. But yeah, it's like once you see what Belphemon does, it's pretty how to play with him is fairly straightforward. You just go into sleep mode and Bedge, then you woke into Rage mode and win the game. Gift of Darkness is a removal spell. You can, it deletes a level 6 or higher, and because it's your only way to remove level 7s, I think it's important to run at least some of them. Otherwise, you can get locked down by things like Exa or Quartz, or your opponent can, like, say, evolve into a burst mode without burst evolving, and then force you to just stare at their burst mode. So yeah, Gift of Darkness is important. I know some people run more than this. I'm kind of hesitant because outside of popping level 7 specifically, this card kind of ass. I guess security effect is nice too, so just another reason why you want to run more. But you know, there are a lot of moments where I overdraw these cards and have to discard them because they just aren't doing anything for me in like a lot of the matchups where they just aren't going into 7s. Demonic Disaster is better. Yeah, Demonic Disaster is at least better than BL's Blast Mode because it costs 1 and you should have more than enough ways to get bodies out on the board. Especially with that thing I was talking about where you swing a Gizmon, then if it dies, you get a new one, and you can swing and bleed that Gizmon spawns a new body, and then you have a body for Demonic Disaster. And you can run Demonic Disaster. I think I just ran out of space. I think space is kind of tight because you're running like you're running all of the Gizmons, you're running 4 of each of the Rage modes, you're running all of these Karatas, then all the other things that you need, like level 3s and 4s, you start running out of space. So the amount of text you can bring is kind of narrow, especially since I really don't want to give up on something like Purple Memory Boost to dig for pieces. You can run Purple Memory Boost, and I've seen people like run Analog Boy instead of Purple Memory Boost. And that's viable, but I generally prefer Boost because if taking into account the delay effect, it basically costs less than Analog Boy, because with the way you play the deck, you don't get a lot of opportunities to actually trigger Analog Boy's memory gain effect. Like, it's almost always the only way you're doing that is if you have a Rage mode with something underneath it and you pop it with Astamon, right? And which isn't something that happens like every game. So I generally prefer Purple Memory Boost over Analog Youth. But Analog Youth is pretty valid though. I think I mentioned why I like Purple Memory Boost. The deck requires so many pieces. You need to see Sleep Mode, and you need to see Rage Mode, and you need to see an enabler, either Astamon or Karata, and you need to see the Digimon that you need to like get into those cards. So yeah, Purple Memory Boost, really valuable to me, in my opinion. Calling from the Darkness is pretty self-explanatory, especially since like Belphemon Sleep Mode discards itself at the end of the turn, so you're going to want ways to get it back if you aren't drawing new ones. Either Dober or Calling from the Darkness works, but you can also just use it to trigger the on deletions of your Gizmons if, say, you really need to climb up that way. And then finally, Omnimon's Wart. This could be any number of level 7s. This is also like a toolbox sort of thing where like any level 7 you can run in this deck could be this card. I'm still trying this Wart because I keep hearing this Zwart's really good in this. The idea behind Zwart is that you evolve it over one of your Belphemons, after you've done the Belphy turn to go into your next one. It mills 3, then you play Astamon and Gizmon AT or some other Gizmon from the trash for free, and then the Astamon effect can delete the Gizmon AT to go into your next sleep mode. That's the idea behind it. It costs 6 to evolve as opposed to paying 7 for Astamon. So it's a slightly cheaper Astamon. I've yet to use it myself in any of my games, but I'm still willing to give it a chance. You can play a different level 7 besides this though. There are like a number of pretty viable options. Death X is a really good one, and Sword Defeat I've heard a suggestion for to delete Tamers because that could come up in a lot of scenarios. And besides that, there's also Ruin Mode. Did I already say Ruin Mode? Yeah. Sword Defeat, Death X, Ruin Mode. There's probably others too. Like anything that can evolve off a... Or you can just like cut the level 7s entirely. Having level 7s is nice sometimes to combo with Gift of Darkness's security effect, because you need to, if you want to delete a level 7 with its security effect, you need a level 7 in your hand. But yeah. Zwart not good, you still need sleep mode in hand. Yeah, that's like the one thing about Zwart is you still need the sleep mode in your hand. But you need the sleep mode in your hand regardless of what you're doing if you want to go into sleep mode. This is just basically you get to play the Astamon for cheaper by using one of your Belphemons as a jumping off. Not to mention, if you do that, you also get the X. If you go to Zwart and you get your Astamon AT, the AT then on deletes gets you an XT. So you then end up with 3 bodies. You get the Zwart, you have the sleep mode at the ready, and you have the XT blocker. And if you get XT blocker, then you also get Karata. So that's doing all of those at once is really nice, to be honest. You like how many play paths with this deck? Me too. That's one of the really nice things about this deck. Though a lot of those play paths are you're doing them for the sake of digging for your pieces. 90% of your gameplay is just like, what's the most optimal way for me to dig my deck so I can find the sleep mode and rage mode ASAP, and the Astamon and Karata, right? And you have to do that while also playing around whatever your opponent is up to. So sometimes you have to consider like, okay, I'm against Black Warg and they have a Virus Metal Gray X. So my Gizmon AT is probably going to get popped. Why don't I discard the XT to make it so that if they do pop it, I get the XT for free? Stuff like that. That's really nice. What's my take on Nidhogg's? Nidhogg is it's a choice. You can run it. I don't think it's the wrong thing to play Nidhoggs. They aren't necessary, right? They're a tech card just like all the other tech cards I have. And because, like I mentioned before, space can be kind of tight for your techs. You have to pick between that and any of the other things you need that might be more important, right? Like you could every once in a while do the haha funny I end your turn with Belphemon sleep mode discarding Nidhoggs. But yeah, it's like not actually necessary. And there's also times where you can use it to like make AT cheaper and stuff. But like, you know, if you can find a space for it and you want to play it over, say, something like Doberman, say over something like your 4th Karata, go for it. You know, it's not like it's a bad choice, but I feel like there's like an opportunity cost to it compared to like any of the other tech cards you could be running, or something like Boost that is also helping you with your consistency. You could say run it over, say, this Zwart, because I keep saying that this Zwart isn't coming up enough for me. Though this Zwart could also be any other level 7. So yeah, the reason why you play Devimon over Vilemon, and you could play Vilemon instead if you're worried about Ruin mode specifically, but I don't know, I'm not, maybe it's because I haven't been in that scenario enough, because most of my practice has been in these webcam events, and I've seen Shine only a couple of times. But like, yeah, it's valid to go for Vilemon instead because of Ruin mode. But like, you're weighing that versus the 1 Evo cost for Devimon, which I think comes up a couple of times when you're trying to go into Asta, right? That's sort of the big thing there. Weigh your options. Do you care more about the Shine Ruin matchup so you can go Vilemon instead? Or do you care more about the memory efficiency with Devimon so you can more... Because this deck isn't running... or my current deck isn't running a Mem Tamer. You could. Purple Mat's pretty valid. You can run that over Purple Boost or one of your Karatas or Zizwart or anything else, right? Any of the flex slot could be Purple Mat. But because of that, when you get locked to 1, it's super valuable to have the 1 cost Evo into 3 cost Astamon, right? If you do use Divine Disaster, you think you need 1 Dracmon, you can get away with not running it because this deck isn't a mill deck. You're not going to accidentally mill your Demonic Disaster, right? And you're probably not going to use it more than once per game either because if you're ever using it, it's usually to end the game. But like, it is a valid choice to go for the Dracmon, especially since Dracmon also can grab back Calling from the Darkness, and you can play Dracmon for free off of the Astamon effect. But yeah, it's up to you. It's like you have, like I said, there's like more than enough options for level 3s besides these ones. I've seen people play BT5 Guilmon, which is valid as well because it makes your ATs cheaper, which means it's a cheaper way of climbing up through the Gizmon line. If you evolve your level 3 into Guilmon, then pass the turn on boost or Karata, then you can next turn play Gizmon AT for 1 essentially, then XT, and then if you still kept your turn after that, you can go XT into sleep mode, right? But generally, I think I'd rather have fast go because more than memory, usually the thing I'm always worried about is finding sleep mode, finding rage mode, etc. Finding Karata, finding Asta. Oh, Dead or Alive or Underworld's Call. I don't know about running Dead or Alive because that plays 5 specifically. It's usually a card meant for Balthamon. Oh yeah, I guess you can use it to play Astamon, and then you can like, if it's in security, you play Astamon from your trash out of security. It's kind of funny, right? You know, you can use that. You can evolve into sleep mode during your opponent's turn for free. So that's kind of cool. Kind of a gimmick because that's specifically an interaction for the security. Paying 8 to get an Astamon from your trash is like kind of eh. I mean, I guess it costs about the same to do with like calling plus Astamon is also 8, so it might be kind of worth it for the recursion aspect. But like, yeah, it's kind of a gimmick. It's if you want to run it, go ahead. Underworld's Call is something I've seen more and more people play. Um, it's like under the same umbrella of of Gizmon, where sure you're discarding cards and you want to keep a low hand count, but sometimes if you play too many Gizmons, you're going way too low and you need more ways to dig, which means that Underworld's Call is pretty valid for that. You know, you can discard it off of your Gizmons to like try to hover around 5 to 6 cards in hand and helps you dig for pieces. You can run them. I've seen more than enough people, other lists from Japan run Underworld's Call. Um, you know, and it's up to you if you want to run that. Yeah, exactly. The Dead or Alive thing is extremely gimmicky. If you're just, you know, having fun with friends, then have fun with all the gimmicks you can think of, right? Um, or like in locals or whatever. Underworld's Call is a bit more of a like actual consideration for like a serious version of the deck. You just gotta make sure you just like as long as you're paying attention to your hand size, you should know when to discard it or not, right? And sometimes just playing it for 40 for an AT is pretty value. Like I said before, space for text is a little tight in this deck. Like, I'd love to be running more than one Devi, Ogre, Dober, Purple Mem Boost, etc. Or another Gift of Darkness. But like I said, space is a little tight. I can just barely fit these things in. Alternatively, I can cut like an XT or a Karata, but like I don't agree with that because these cards are often really important for like actually getting into Belphemon, so I'm more hesitant on cutting them, but I've seen people get away with it. What's the hardest matchup? Uh, beside blue anything really. I think I got really lucky to actually win against Blue Flare today. He was really close to beating me. So there's that. Mirage Gao is also a pain in the ass. He bounces your Gizmon so they don't get to float. He adds cards to your hand so you don't get the DP boost on Rage mode. So, again, pain in the ass. So anything blue is obviously really bad matchup. Uh, in that same vein, Examon can be annoying as well. You know, anything that runs level 7s means you have to use Gift of Darkness to out it, and with Examon specifically, he has Evade, which makes it even harder to out. Yeah, Jesmon GX is also level 7, which means, and uh, is Jesmon GX even going to be difficult to out? He's not going to be able to attack into your sleep mode because you just end the attack, right? Unless he can attack multiple times in a turn. And then once it's your turn, you pop all the sisters with your rage mode, so you can probably Gift of Darkness to them. But it's like that's definitely going to be another one of those matchups where you need Gift of Darkness. Anything that tries to win really fast is also going to be a pain in the ass because if you don't like have the cards in your hand to make Belphemon like turn 2, turn 3, you could get run over before that. You could get like run over by aggro decks before you get a chance to play the game. So that's a thing. So like against anything that wins the game turns 2 or 3, you definitely need to like, you know, you really need to like draw your best hand ever to keep up with them. But yeah, those are the hard matchups off the top of my head. Is stuff like that specifically. Oh yeah, Wargrey can be a pain in the ass as a matchup as well. I think I mentioned before, They can pop your Karatas, which means if you don't have your Karatas, you can't out their Wargreys, and you need multiple, and you even need multiple usually because of their protections. And then like Raid Wargrey, like just eats Sleep Mode for breakfast, and is the reason you want to be playing blockers in this deck is because of Raid Wargrey. Yeah, I think those are all like the notable bad matchups, I think.